So we can dive right in, right?
Dive right in, yep.
All right, let's dive into where we need to start at the top of the show. And when we talk about Kevin Stefanski not saying anything, that's kind of what his news conferences are. His lips are moving, but nothing's coming out. I felt like he did say some things yesterday. I don't know if it's a conscious effort for him to be a little more transparent.
Well,
but
Jay, we talked about this yesterday with Barry because he talked the other day and actually said some things too.
I wonder if
it was bizarre that both of them would say nothing.
Do you think that's a conscious effort?
Yes.
Because Jimmy was pretty critical of a commentary that got widespread throughout Cleveland.
Right.
They need to be more open. Share more with us.
Looks like they
we're
both
living
did.
this pain too. And I thought that both Barry and Stefanski talked. He spent 20 minutes with the media, said he's going to continue calling plays, talked about the backup quarterback. Alex Van Pelt will double as the quarterback's coach. Bill Musgrave, although he's a consultant or whatever, a special offensive coach, he's not going to work specifically with quarterbacks. And Bubba Ventrone, as we suspected all along, was their guy. And they knew that if they had a chance to get him, they were going to go for it. What stands out the most to Jason? We'll start with you. You were there. What stands out the most to you about what he had to say?
Something that probably sounds weird, but the fact that they're returning AVP to the quarterback role, to the quarterback coach. And I didn't really process this and think of this until after, so I haven't really talked to anyone about it. But that was an opportunity to bring someone in who Deshaun has comfortability with or has passed with or history with, and they chose not to do that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe that's just vote of confidence in the relationship between Deshaun and AVP.
Right.
Because I'm sure that they consulted with Deshaun. He's the most powerful person in that building. 5-year, $230 million deal. He is the voice in that room that they're listening to. So I can only assume that they checked with Deshaun first before doing that. But that would have been an opportunity if there was someone else that he really liked from his past to work with, to bring in.
The guy he works with and calls his quarterback coach, was he an option?
Quincy Avery, I don't think so.
He sort of, it's like a tutor. He works with a bunch of different guys.
Yeah, he works with a bunch of different guys.
Yeah.
I think that probably would have been a disaster if they went that route.
You don't want to bring in a guy's personal guy.
No, it never ends well.
Yeah,
Never.
But I went back, I think Carl Smith was his quarterback's coach in Houston when he had his best year, but he's now the assistant head coach in Seattle.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to get him. So maybe there just wasn't anyone available out there who he felt really comfortable with. I just found that curious because obviously with Drew Pensing moving on to Arizona, it creates an opening on the coaching staff. That's an opportunity to bring in someone that he's familiar with, and they chose to just stick with AVP.
Do you think it happened to any protest?
No.
You just think that?
No, I just found
he was in on that decision for sure.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I just found it interesting.
Okay.
That's all.
Bull, what stood out to you?
I tell you, what stood out to me, obviously, is that I guess I'm not surprised, but just that it was good that he made clear that he's going to call plays again. I know some people are hot and bothered by that. I've never been hot and bothered by that. I think, in fact, if anything, it's like, okay, we know the clear line of delineation here. Jim Schwartz is running the offense, the defense. Kevin Stefanski's running the offense. They will be solely to blame if their sides of the ball fail.
Right.
Like Kevin Stefanski is like, well, I'm not switching up now. My job's on the line now. If I'm going down, I'm going down the way I want to go down, which makes sense. I do the same thing if I were him.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah.
Bush?
I'm glad they started to feel that pressure a little bit. I actually did yesterday. Did she think that there's a pressure from the way the fan base is looking at it? And she said she didn't think so. I have to disagree with that. What tells me why they feel the pressure is because they are making certain decisions to be more open. They are being more transparent. They are doing things that can help them out a little bit better. And a lot of times people think it's all about on the field. Why do you think they take all companies to these retreats where they do seminars, right? They get you out of your mode, and then they get you in there with a trainer and say, hey, guys, this is the way you guys are actively communicating, and it's causing a few problems. You may not think so because you're rooted in what you've been doing forever. Sometimes when you get coaches, they forget that football is a sport, and yes, X's and O's count, and yes, strategy counts. But what also counts is your communication style, the way you communicate, the way you work with others, and those things matter, and those things can get you to a place where just on the field stuff can't. So I think they feel it a little bit, and I like it. I like the fact that Deshaun Watson is ranked 24th for quarterbacks. I like the fact that Stefanski feels that they have to keep making moves and they got to be aggressive every year, because that sense of urgency is what sharpens steel. And now I think that they really, for the first time, are all in on, hey, listen, we got to worry about these wins and losses. All that other stuff, let's get it fixed and let's circle these wagons.
There's no gentleman's putt next year.
No, this is it. And to your point earlier about, and I don't expect him to change now. Why would he? But there's no insulation layer for Kevin Stefanski.
No, this is it.
If
It's
it
all
doesn't
on him.
work. Where if he would have handed off the play calling duties,
Right.
and things didn't go well, there could be a possible scapegoat and reason.
Right.
I talk about a lot on this show because I just was so upset about it when it happened. When Marty Schottenheimer left Cleveland over the rift that he needed to hire an offensive coordinator. And Marty said that he wasn't going to do it. And Art said, well, you can't continue to coach the team if you don't do it. And that was it. We lost a great coach in the process. This situation is a little bit different. I think there's pressure from fans and some media members for Stefanski to give up the play calling. It's what he does best, and he's going to hold tightly to it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And
I
if
don't
it
think
doesn't
there's any
work out,
internal pressure to get rid of play.
I don't think there is either,
Yeah, no.
or it would have happened, I think.
Right.
And I think the bottom line here is he's going to your point, go down with his own philosophy, with his own play
That's right.
calling. Now, I do find it fascinating that Musgrave is coming in here. And I don't know if we talked about this with you or not, Jay. Did we talk about that when you were in
No,
on Tuesday?
I don't think so.
He
No,
wasn't
because
here
you were at
Tuesday.
the
Yeah,
combine. What do you make of that whole thing? Because typically when that happens, it's kind of what was going on in Tennessee with Schwartz on the defensive side. They had a young defensive coordinator. They didn't want to rattle his cage and bring in a guy like Schwartz that had coaching experience and was a well-thought-of defensive coordinator. So, in theory, they didn't give him the title of defensive coordinator, but he was there for a reason, and I'm sure Mike was listening to his input. What's going on with the Musgrave addition, and who should feel threatened by that, if anyone?
I don't think anyone should, honestly. I just think it's another set of eyes and expertise. And the fact that he's not going to be in the quarterback room, I thought was, like Kevin made a point of saying that's not where he is. I think he's going to be more of a consultant type and just someone to lend expertise. But I think it is a little bit different than the Tennessee situation. You're right. Schwartz was a veteran who had a ton of success in that city with that team.
Right.
And I think that's why optically they were trying to keep him away and let the young guy have his time. This is a little bit different, obviously. So I think Musgrave really is just there to lend an ear and lend support and help where he can and offer where he can.
You don't think that it's a sign at all that maybe there's a little bit of lack of trust with AVP? Because at the same time, and Kevin pointed out clearly that the area of domain of AVP now is quarterbacks.
Yeah,
exclusively.
It feels like to me that it's almost like Alex Van Pelt is now the quarterback coach.
That's what it feels like to me.
Musgrave is coming in
as
to help
OC.
Stefanski.
That's what it feels like to me too.
To help
Particularly
Stefanski with the
because
game
he
plan.
made such a point. Why would he make such a point and say he's not going to be working with the quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Because the takeaway there is that's AVP's turf.
Right. You see it that way or no?
No, I don't, because frankly, I don't think AVP would stand for it if he was having OC duties stripped from him.
Well, what's
I don't
he
think
gonna
that
do?
I don't think. Well, I think he could find another job.
At this point?
Well, maybe not at this point, but this wasn't just sprung on them. It's not like they just said in March, "Hey, by the way, we're going to bring Bill Musgrave in." You know, I'm sure that was something that was discussed ahead of time.
And if he was uncomfortable with it, he could have walked.
Yeah, I believe Kevin when he says how much he trusts and likes AVP.
Well, I trust your personal relationship with him. If you say he's not going to say something that he doesn't fully mean, then we'll buy it.
There is a guy on Twitter who I thought said something. I don't know his name. I'm gonna look it up. But he did some research and he talked about how Bill Musgrave was one of those guys who had really specialized and was able to get the running game off the ground in the
shotgun quarterback runs,
which is what they're going to have to do now because Deshaun's going to work out of the shotgun a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think they brought him in as more of a running game coordinator to work with Bill Callahan on how do we get the running game and still have Nick Chubb be effective. And Deshaun Watson, how do we get that run game going? And I think that's why he said he's not going to work with the quarterbacks, because his area of opportunity or expertise is going to be with the running game.
That makes sense.
I'm all for this. I'm all for having another expert in the room. And
Yeah.
what has he been, 12 years as an offensive coordinator? I looked this up. I can't remember.
Yeah,
it's over
about.
a decade. He's got a lot of experience. And anytime you can bring someone into the table that's got that much experience, I think it's only going to help the overall product. So I'm all for it, and I hope everybody has their defined niche, and AVP feels comfortable as the offensive coordinator. But see, to me, I always felt like we never really looked at AVP as the offensive coordinator anyhow.
Because
some
just because
did.
he doesn't call the plays?
Yeah.
But the majority of an offensive coordinator's job is during the week.
It is. You're building the game plan, instilling things that are going to, installing things that are
Right.
going to work. But at the same time, I think that, like, even in Kansas City, where
That's
there was,
where I was going to go.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, just like, okay, we had the big debate about Andy Reid saying how they split the play calling and everything.
Yeah.
But that probably wasn't the case 2-3 years ago.
I don't know. He just said this year it was 52-48.
And everyone looked at Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator 2 and 3 years ago.
Did they?
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
See,
But
I
he
don't
didn't
know. I
get
think that's
credit.
why he couldn't get a job.
He still hasn't gotten credit. By the way, the 52-48 is nonsense.
I agree with
It's
you.
nonsense, of course.
nonsense.
Who's going to track that? Number
Yeah,
one.
right, that's
The
ridiculous.
reason Reid went with 52-48 is because he was trying to
Pump him up.
pump up his
right,
guy.
yeah,
he was
right.
trying to say, look, this guy is doing it already. Now, whether or not that was the case, I don't know. I mean, we have to trust that what he told us was true. But to me, I always looked at the Andy Reid Kansas City situation as he's the guy. I mean, Eric is kind of the AVP to the Chiefs that AVP is to the Browns. He's
But
there.
Matt Nagy did the same thing in Kansas City, and then he did get a job, and they didn't do a good job as head coach of the Bears.
No.
But there have been other offensive coordinators who didn't call plays and say, and ended up getting new jobs.
I don't know. I don't know. There have been.
That's an example, Matt, right there, Matt Nagy.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean, we're assuming that Reid called all the plays when Nagy was there.
yeah, I mean, I've just always assumed Reid calls most of the plays the whole time.
I don't even think it really matters that much. When you hear Deshaun Watson talk about it, he says, well, Bill O'Brien used to let him do everything anyway, right? He said most of what I was doing, I was making all the reads and doing all the checks. Basically, Stefanski and his offense, there's a lot of different guardrails, so you don't have to make those moves. So my thing is this. If you're going to give a guy more power, right? So say, for instance, I'm trying to get my daughter to be in gymnastics. I may be able to tell her what to do to be in shape, but I'm going to have to bring in gymnastics people to tell her. And at some point, I got to, pass her off because they know more than I do. I think at this point, Deshaun will probably wants to run an offense that he has a lot of freedom, and he needs a lot of different people to come in and add input into what the offense is supposed to be in terms of being more creative. Because I think they're just gonna make it up. It's not. He hasn't run anything that he's gonna run this year. I don't think Stefanski has run that in the past. And I think they bring.
So you think we're looking at a 100% offensive redo?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
You have to.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not 100%, but,
I think it's going to look
mostly.
vastly different than it
Yeah,
did
it's
last
got
year.
to.
You know what was funny was last year in camp, I was talking with Jim Donovan after he had looked at things for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this offense doesn't even resemble what the old offense was. And that got me very excited because I didn't want it to resemble what it did the previous year. He's like, they're doing things with Deshaun they've never done before.
Right.
It looks completely, and I turned on the television, I'm like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's the same garbage. I've seen all that before.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, how much can they recreate this wheel?
Well, the problem last year was they didn't know how long he was going to be out.
No, I know, but when he came
Even
back,
while they were in training camp, they didn't know how long he was going to
right?
be out.
I get that, but when he came back,
But they weren't working on
they
that
was
new
running-
offense 100% of the time in the offseason.
He was running Jacoby's playbook when he came back.
I just don't think that, number one, he wasn't the same Deshaun, and number two, there wasn't enough time to completely flip everything. Now there's no excuse. Now you have plenty of time.
well, they were running it in camp though.
I think that was not. I mean, remember that was Deshaun's first time back on the field in quite a while.
It was.
So I think they were experimenting with, okay, what do we like? What looks good? What are you comfortable with? But again, you can't run that with Jacoby,
No.
and you can't flip the entire thing in 3 days.
Yeah.
And plus, Deshaun was unbelievably rusty, far worse than we thought it would be. So I think it was a combination of a lot of factors.
Maybe he was rusty because he was running Jacoby's offense.
Well, I think he was rusty because he was rusty, and
Yeah.
there was a lot
But his comfort level wasn't there for sure.
No, I don't think he was comfortable with playing football, frankly.
Right.
But I mean, all of that's gone. But I mean, that's why I said all year, I got killed for it, but I said all year, like, just punt the season, guys. As soon as the suspension went to 11 games and they rolled with Jacoby Brissett, told me all I needed to know.
I mean, didn't they
this
kinda
season
punt?
don't matter.
But didn't they? They did punt the season.
That's what I'm saying. They internally, to me, punted the year.
And I killed him for not doing certain moves. But then again, if you look back in hindsight, most teams, most organizations would say, well, I'm not going to make no crazy moves if I don't know if the quarterback, when he's going to be here, because I don't know how they fit with the quarterback.
But the crazy thing is, though, even if they did punt on the year, maybe putting a little bit more effort and trying to go out and get a little bit more to put you over the top, the player they needed in the middle or whatever, that could have been the difference between missing the playoffs and making the playoffs. And we all know that once you get to the party, all bets are off.
I think the reality was, by the time we got to the middle of the season, you knew even if somehow the Browns made the playoffs, they weren't going to the Super Bowl.
I mean, they weren't out of it until the loss, really, the second to last
but they
week of
weren't.
the season.
They were so far behind the top teams in the AFC.
There was nobody to go get. Like, they made their decisions in the offseason of Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai.
Well,
and
there wasn't, in Ndamukong Suh early in the season.
But he didn't want to come here.
No, he
I
did.
don't-
There was the reports from CBS and other outlets that said he's looking at his options, and one of the teams that was on the list of teams that he had interest in were the Browns. So I thought, okay, strike while Now, obviously, he waited until later in the season to go to the Eagles. Maybe he wanted to sit back, take a look at the landscape, and see where he
who
could
was
most
emerging.
easily win a
Right,
ring.
yeah.
And that
He
by that
wasn't
point,
gonna
Cleveland
choose
was
the
out
Browns
of it.
at that point, Jay. They would.
What I'm saying is, for what little bit of money the Eagles spent to get him,
yeah.
if the Browns really wanted to go there, and this is what I kind of buy into your theory, gentleman's punt on the season. When that report hit that he was interested in coming to the Cleveland Browns, I just thought at that point, okay, if you're the Browns, overpay for him. I mean, the amount of money they spent was so
I don't
little.
remember a specific article saying that, like, the
If you
Browns,
can-
he was
if you
interested
can,
in the Browns.
McNuggets,
specifically?
Google it. It was a CBS report, CBS Sports report that's
Was
someone
it like
close
a
to him
speculation?
said- no, it was.
I'll confirm, Jay, but I believe the article you're referring to, and I'll pop back in a sec, was teams interested in Sue, not teams he was interested in playing
Maybe I'm
for.
misremembering
So
it.
I'll-
but
I'll go find
call
it
that
real
up.
quick.
Like, at some point, I do remember hearing that there was interest in Sue in the
Yeah.
Browns.
I mean,
So just do
honestly,
it.
to me, Ndamukong Suh wouldn't have made a difference in the win-loss record of the Browns.
I don't know,
mean,
man.
he was brought into Philadelphia as a rotational player. He wasn't a starter there.
No, because their line didn't need him to start.
because he's old. I mean,
but
you know,
is he a dramatic improvement from what we had there?
I don't know at this point. in
I
his career.
also think
I'll
he
say
wasn't
yes.
interested in playing until he chose to play.
Right.
He didn't
That's
want
entirely possible.
He didn't
Right.
want training camp. He didn't want 100-degree summer days.
No, but we
He
were like
didn't even
4 or
want
5
September and
weeks into the
October.
season when this was going on, and I mean, clearly, Browns weren't off to a hot start.
Yeah.
But I think they were 2-2 to start, and things went sideways real quickly
I think
from there.
he signed when he was ready to sign. It's not like
Maybe.
the Eagles
Yeah,
were the
but
first team to call.
You
know
can
what
prod
I
a
mean?
player. If his agent's saying, the market looks like $2 million,
But
which is I think the number
but
that
if
he ended up
you're-
getting.
Yeah.
You can prod a player by saying Browns are
Sure.
willing to give $4 million.
And
But that's $4 million off of this year's cap they wouldn't have now.
but
so maybe,
I
No,
also
it's been a 1-year deal.
I'm also not
no,
sure.
but the money rolls over if you don't use it.
But I also am not sure that you want to. I mean, they did that with Deshaun, and we'll see how that ends. They did it with Mike Holmgren, and it ended in disaster. Overpaying guys just to get them to come in doesn't always work.
Yeah,
that,
but-
who was that white defensive lineman they signed from the Ravens? Like 10
Taven
years.
Bryan.
No, that's
No.
Paul Kruger.
Paul Kruger.
Yeah, Paul
Remember they
Kruger.
overpaid that scrub? He sucked here.
well,
He had
look,
about 8 sacks 1 year.
I mean, but if you're overpaying somebody and it's only $4 million total,
I'm just
I
saying.
mean, by NFL standards, that's nothing.
But I'm just saying, if you're bringing a guy in at gunpoint who doesn't want to be there, and the only reason he's there is for the check, and he really wanted to be elsewhere, a lot of times that's not going to end well.
Well,
for you.
what I am all for, I'm all for them doing what they should have did last year, this year. So they got, look, I guarantee they ain't go gentleman's punt now.
There's no punting
There
now.
ain't no
No,
punting
they
You're
now.
going for it now.
Yeah.
You gentlemen punt, that's like suicide.
Yeah.
A gentleman's punt this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know who survives
No,
a gentleman's
no.
punt.
Everybody's
I don't
getting
know.
fired if it doesn't go
if you
well.
have like a 5-12 season
Everybody's
or 6-11,
fired.
I don't see anybody that can survive that.
9 and 8 ain't getting it done.
You might
No,
as-
it
I mean,
probably won't.
I mean,
if the
it's-
Browns finish 5-12, that is a bigger disaster than when they went 0-16, because
because the talent's here.
everybody's getting fired. that means Deshaun Watson is maybe shot, and at a young age.
And where are you now for the next 4 years?
You're screwed forever.
Go ahead.
So I just found a bunch of the Sue reports.
Yeah.
Everything said the Browns were continuing to monitor Sue, and he had no interest in signing till at least after training camp.
Okay.
There was nothing that said.
No. This was an in-season report.
No, but I'm just saying, like, going back to when the reports
Yeah,
first
no,
started,
this
it
was-
was all Browns monitoring
that's-
Sue, not Sue
Yeah, that is not the
necessarily.
report I'm referring to because we did it here on the show, and the season. I think the Browns were either 2-2 or 2-3 at the time.
By the way, before we move on, I wanted to we got to bring up the backup quarterback situation.
Oh yeah. What did he say about it?
I think that they're going to bring in a veteran. I don't think you can roll with Kellen Mond.
No.
But it's interesting because if you look at what I mentioned this to Zach Jackson yesterday on our podcast. If you look at what Indianapolis did with Peyton Manning, they always had a nobody, no money guy behind him because their thought was, if Peyton goes down, we're screwed. So why should we?
I don't think teams generally should spend a lot. I think it's overrated. I think in this town, we're obsessed with the backup quarterback. But once you have a good quarterback, and you have to assume Watson is, because if he's not, you're not doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think the backup quarterback's that important generally.
But I think you
Ask
have
the
to.
49ers what they think about the backup quarterback.
Well, but they're.
But they don't have a good starter. They're
No,
backup.
they're not spending. Well, but you know what though?
They were spending a lot
was,
with Jimmy
was
G.
on a big deal, and now they weren't spending a lot of money on Brock Purdy. He was the Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the
They
draft.
stumbled into that.
They did stumble into that, but I mean, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't spend a lot of money on that position because
Right.
at that point the car's already totaled. I
Yeah.
get that, but when you see what happened in San Francisco last year, you can understand the value of having the right guy in that spot.
You know, I would call Marcus Mariota and see what the number is.
I
See
wonder
if he
what
could get
he's
something
going
done.
to command.
It's
He was
not
up
going to be
like,
much.
Wasn't he at like $22 million or something?
It's not going to be much. I
They
think
saved 12 by cutting him.
I don't know, guys.
I think his days as a starter are over.
How many good teams have a good backup quarterback? There's just not that many.
Not many.
No.
It's
I mean,
not-
the Chiefs
especially
don't-
when you're committing $55
The
million to your
Bengals
starter.
don't.
Oh, you say the Chiefs don't,
Well,
but I can think of two situations
Henny
where
delivered for
I
him.
know,
Henny
but
just
came in
not
against the
competent.
Browns.
You don't need good. You need
Don't
competent.
talk about that,
Competent
man.
and experienced. I mean, Henny kept their season going
Yeah.
by beating the Browns.
Yeah, but they're not, how much
And-
were they paying Henny? They were
$3
paying
million,
Not
right?
nothing.
Exactly.
But he's
$3
a
million.
competent. He's been around.
But
He's
nobody's
guy-
saying not get someone competent. But like some of these teams spend $10 million for a backup. That's crazy.
Well, the Browns
Yeah, you can't
did
do
in
that.
Stefanski's first year.
You can't do that. Well, that was, I think, a different situation because he was trying to find someone familiar with what he
now
wanted
that
to
you
run.
have a good quarterback, no team with a good quarterback
I don't-
spends big money on a
I
backup.
don't know. This is different. This is a little different. You got a guy with 2 ACL tears.
Doesn't matter. You're paying him $55 million.
The season's over, G. If he gets hurt, the season's over.
If I'm
Who's the backup quarterback
it-
taking the Browns to the playoffs?
Listen, if I'm
It
a
ain't
coach,
Jacoby.
if I'm a coach,
For
Yeah.
sure, that ship sailed 1,000%.
if I'm a coach,
999%.
if it's my job on the line, I'm hedging my bet. I'm sorry, I'm hedging somewhere. I'm not gonna give him
But
$15 million.
name me the backup quarterback of the backup quarterbacks that are going to get paid decent money. Who's going to take the Browns to the playoffs? None.
Jacoby Brissett.
But
Yeah, he couldn't do it last
You're
year.
probably right. You're probably
was-
right. But Bull, here's what's different.
Yeah.
You're saying I'm not going to take insurance on the biggest,
Year.
most important position in pro sports when my career's on the line. Because the front office
Because
is
there's no insurance. If you're
no, there is insurance.
No.
The backup quarterback is the insurance
No,
policy.
the backup quarterback you can't win with the backup
If
quarterback.
this is Major
Once
League
in a blue moon,
if
maybe
this is Major
you
League
get
Baseball,
lucky.
if
I
this
don't know.
is-
Brock Purdy looked pretty damn good.
Yeah, until he didn't, and they were out.
If
Well,
got hurt.
No, he got hurt.
Okay,
It
well,
wasn't
what do you-
until he didn't.
If-
They were on their fourth string quarterback. You can't have three insurance
How many
policies.
situations are like that where you get that lucky?
It worked for them.
Until it didn't.
When Brady went down,
Yeah.
first week of the season with an ACL,
Yeah.
Matt
Garoppolo.
Castle comes in there,
Castle, yep.
and Matt Castle takes
Didn't
the
make
team
the
10 and
playoffs.
6.
And they
Yeah,
didn't
but
make playoffs.
they won 10 games.
But they didn't make the playoffs.
No, but they won
We
10
could
games.
come up with all these oddball,
I'm
once
just saying,
in a million year
if I'm the
scenarios.
GM and I know that my career is on the line here,
Yeah.
I'm sure
and
it's
I'm
that.
going to leave it up to a guy that's had 2 torn ACLs, I don't know.
But